The rain had just stopped, but the streets of Portland still smelled of despair and damp cardboard. Michael Turner, a 35-year-old construction supervisor, walked through the park on his way to grab a coffee before work. He wasn't the kind of man who usually noticed strangers. Life had hardened him. After losing his wife 3 years ago, he'd learned to keep his eyes down, his heart closed, and his world small. But that morning, something made him look up. Perhaps it was the soft cry carried by the cold wind, or maybe it was the sight of a little boy, barefoot, holding a stuffed bunny that had clearly seen better days. The boy, no older than 3, was clinging to his mother. A young woman with long brown hair, a faded blue dress, and the kind of tired eyes that told stories words could never express. She looked lost, standing in the middle of the green park as if she didn't belong anywhere. The boy's head rested on her shoulder, his small arms gripping her tightly. Michael slowed his steps, unable to look away. The moment was ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. A mother, a child, and an unspoken kind of suffering that tugged at something deep inside him. If you believe that kindness can still change a life, that second chances still exist in this world, then please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe to our channel. Because stories like this remind us what it truly means to be human. Michael wasn't the kind of man who interfered, but as he walked past, he heard the softest voice, weak and trembling. The little boy, pressing his cheek against his mother's shoulder, whispered, "Mommy, I'm hungry. We haven't eaten in 2 days." The words froze Michael in place. He turned around slowly, coffee cup in hand, staring at the woman who was now trying hard to smile at her son, pretending everything would be fine. But Michael saw it, the truth behind her trembling lips. He had walked away from a lot of things in life, friends, family gatherings, even his own emotions. But in that moment, he couldn't take another step. Something in his heart broke open. He approached her slowly, uncertain, his voice hesitant. He asked if she needed help, but the woman only shook her head, embarrassed, holding her boy closer. Her pride was the only thing she had left, and she was trying desperately not to lose that too. Michael noticed the woman's clothes were damp from the rain, her shoes worn out, and the boy's face pale. He didn't press her. Instead, he offered his coffee cup gently to the child, who looked up at his mother for permission. She nodded slowly, and the boy sipped from it, his small hands trembling. It wasn't food, but it was warmth. And that mattered. Michael stood there awkwardly, unsure what to say next. Then quietly, he said there was a small diner across the street. He told her he was heading there anyway, and they could join him, no questions asked. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, holding her child, she nodded silently. Inside the diner, they sat in a corner booth. Michael noticed how the woman kept glancing at the menu without ordering, as if afraid of the prices. He ordered for them. Pancakes, scrambled eggs, orange juice for the boy. When the food arrived, the little boy's eyes widened as if he had forgotten what a real meal looked like. He ate slowly at first, then with quiet urgency, his mother wiping his mouth gently between bites. Michael looked away to give them privacy, but his throat tightened with emotion. Her name was Grace Miller, and her son was Ethan. She had come to Portland 3 weeks ago, chasing the promise of a job that never existed. A scammer had taken her last savings, leaving her homeless. Her husband had died in an accident 2 years earlier, and since then, life had been one long fall. For nights, she had slept in bus stations, under bridges, trying to keep her son safe. "I just need one chance," she said softly, not looking at him. "I can work, clean, anything. I just don't want him to go hungry." Michael felt something he hadn't felt in years. A purpose. He had been living, but not feeling. His days were mechanical, work, eat, sleep, repeat. But now, sitting across from Grace and her child, he saw the kind of pain he used to know, the pain of losing everything. He had lost his wife, Anna, to cancer, and for years he had shut everyone out. Helping Grace wasn't charity. It was healing. He offered to pay for a motel for a few nights until she could find her footing. Grace resisted, insisting she couldn't accept more help. But he looked at her, his voice calm yet firm, and said, "It's not pity. It's just what someone once did for me." That broke her resistance. With tears in her eyes, she accepted. Over the next few days, Michael found himself visiting them after work. He brought groceries, toys for Ethan, and sometimes just company. Grace began to open up, telling him about her small-town childhood, her dreams of becoming a teacher, and how everything fell apart after her husband's death. Michael, in turn, told her about Anna, how her laughter once filled his house and how silence had taken over after she was gone. The bond that grew between them wasn't rushed or forced. It was fragile, gentle, and real. Grace started cleaning houses for income, and Michael helped her set up small ads for domestic work. Ethan began to smile more, and the sound of his laughter in the motel courtyard reminded Michael of what he had been missing, a reason to care again. One evening, Grace invited Michael to the park, the same park where they had first met. Ethan was chasing bubbles while the two of them sat on a bench. Grace turned to him and said, "You could have walked away that day. Why didn't you?" Michael looked down at his hands, the memory still fresh in his mind. "Because I know what it feels like to have no one look back." The days turned into weeks, and slowly, life began to shift. Grace found steady work cleaning at a local diner. She saved every dollar she could, refusing to depend on anyone forever. Michael helped her find a small apartment near the construction site where he worked. It wasn't much, but it was a start, a place to call home. But life, as it often does, tested them again. One night, Ethan fell sick with a high fever. Grace panicked, rushing him to the hospital with no insurance and barely any money. When the doctor said they needed to admit him, she broke down in the waiting room, afraid she couldn't afford the care. But before she could collapse under the weight of it all, Michael arrived, having been called by the hospital. Without hesitation, he signed the papers, covered the bills, and stayed through the night. Grace never forgot that moment. When Ethan recovered, she looked at Michael differently. Not as a stranger, not even as a savior, but as someone who had quietly become family. She realized that sometimes miracles don't come with halos or wings. Sometimes they wear work boots and carry coffee cups in the rain. Months later, Grace stood in front of a small classroom. She had found a part-time job teaching children at a local community center. Michael watched from the doorway, smiling as Ethan played nearby. The woman who once stood lost in the rain now stood tall, her voice steady, her heart full. She later told Michael that his kindness had saved 2 lives, not 1. He only smiled and said, "You just needed someone to remind you that you were never broken, just waiting to be seen." As spring turned to summer, their connection deepened. Michael often came by after work, sometimes bringing dinner, sometimes just sitting with them as the sun went down. Grace had stopped hiding her gratitude, and Ethan had begun calling him Uncle Mike. It made Michael's heart swell with something he hadn't felt in years: hope. One late evening, they stood in the same park where it all began. The air was warm, filled with the scent of blooming flowers. Grace watched Ethan chase fireflies and turned to Michael. "You changed our lives," she whispered. He shook his head gently. "No, Grace. You changed mine." That night, as they walked home together, it wasn't about charity or rescue anymore. It was about 2 broken souls who had found light in each other's presence. It was proof that sometimes the smallest acts, sharing a coffee, offering a meal, can set in motion something far greater than we can ever imagine. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Every view helps us continue sharing stories of kindness and hope that the world still needs to hear. And before you go, Comment below. Do you believe one small act of kindness can truly change a life? Because that day, in the quiet park of Portland, one man didn't walk away. And in doing so, he changed 3 lives forever.